Good morning, everyone, and welcome to one of our final working groups for the Annual Policy Initiatives Roadmap Process 2024 for the Discretionary Initiatives Prioritization. Today, we plan to talk about the draft catalog that was posted, as well as discuss during this what we spoke about in the past 3 working groups for this stakeholder submissions. And our group here today, Alyssa, Craig, Arnold, and Amelia Blanke will introduce themselves, and they'll be helping out with any questions and discussions for today's meeting. As this call is being recorded for informational communities purposes only, any related transcriptions should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. And we encourage questions and comments throughout. As well, we encourage professional and brief and respectful comments during this meeting, and also please refrain from repeating any mentioned comments, so that way we can make sure our time is effectively used. We're also aware that there was another meeting happening, so we are going to have this meeting recorded, so hopefully everyone can see, as well announcements about the survey that will be helpful for those who want to submit and participate in that. Our technical producer is Yolande, and my name is Brenda Cronin on behalf of Stakeholder Affairs, so we'll be monitoring the chat window, and we'll also be looking out for the queue here today for raised hands. We also have Alyssa who will be helping out Amelia while she shares her screen in a few moments. But those who are in the queue today, we would like to invite you, if you want to ask a question, click on the raise hand that's located above the chat window on the very top right corner. This is a new location of the new WebEx. You'll see it there. Click on it. It'll add you to queue. As a reminder, when you're added a queue and you're muted, make sure you don't mute yourself, because it will double mute you the moment you mute yourself. So those who are just dialed in through just the phone line with no WebEx, it means that you will only use *3 to be dialed in to add to the queue to ask a question. And this is really important. A few folks do forget, but please be sure to state your full name and affiliation. We do want to know who's speaking, who's asking a question. It's really important for us, the CAISO team, to know who's speaking and others who are on the call. So make sure you provide your affiliation or acronym or organization title. That'll be great, and ask any questions. But at this time, Yolande, go ahead and pass presentation to Amelia. And Amelia, you have the floor, and with Alyssa. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'd just like to take a moment to really thank the stakeholder community, many of you who have dialed into this call today, for all of the input that you've given us on this very new process this year. We are very open to ideas and any suggestions that you have for improving it going forward. And I just don't think we would have been able to I don't think we would have a successful process this year without the extensive input that we've gotten from all of you. The purpose of the call today, as Brenda mentioned, is that we're in the final stage of our policy catalog development, where we're asking stakeholders to prioritize that final set of discretionary initiatives. So with this one last ask of our stakeholder community, I will hand it off to Alyssa. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I'm going to start here with what might be a familiar slide for those of you who have been participating in the stakeholder process for the catalog so far. But for anyone who's jumping in now to participate in the prioritization comment period, the catalog process is really, like Amelia said, where we really want your engagement and feedback on these stakeholder-submitted discretionary policy initiatives. From submitting these proposed initiatives to presenting on them over the last couple of months, and then finally identifying the priorities among them during the upcoming comment period. The goal here has really been to make sure that all stakeholders have the opportunity to express to the ISO what their policy priorities are and why. This feedback is really critical for developing the final catalog that we'll be releasing next month, and then the roadmap, which Amelia will be speaking to later. Next slide, please. Just in terms of timing and where we're at now and where we're going, this is the final stakeholder meeting on the catalog, and this wraps up the last several months of stakeholder activity, which started with stakeholders submitting their proposed policy initiatives in February. And then the ISO holding a series of stakeholder workshops for stakeholders to present on their proposals and provide clarification or answer any questions from other stakeholders. The ISO published a draft catalog last week. This is posted on the stakeholder initiative page and also linked at the end of this presentation. And the draft catalog is essentially a list of final items that were submitted to the process that fell into the discretionary policy initiative category and that stakeholders presented on the last couple of months. Amelia is also going to speak to the submissions that are not considered discretionary policy initiatives and were not included in the draft catalog, but the ISO will be responding to all submissions, including items that were not included in the draft catalog. And the next step is really the culmination of all the stakeholder meetings that we've been having in this entire process and the work that's been done so far. And this is the upcoming comment period on the draft catalog where stakeholders are going to have the opportunity to kind of rank and identify their priorities among the items that are included in the draft catalog. Next slide, please. And this comment period opens today. We'll have it open for 2 weeks through June 26th. This is really the single formal comment opportunity on the draft catalog. We've heard from a lot of you during the last few stakeholder workshops, but we really need you to submit your priorities here so that we can kind of formally count them and understand the level of support for each one of the initiatives included in the draft catalog. Amelia's going to pull it up in a minute, but this is a really simple voting template. We have a lot of submissions, so we try to keep it as simple as possible so that it would be a reasonably efficient process. So we first have kind of a list of the categories of submissions. So that includes ancillary services, bidding, et cetera. And we're asking US stakeholders to identify your highest priority category and then rank the remaining categories as support, neutral, or oppose. Next, we'll have a list of the discretionary policy initiatives that were included in the draft catalog. Again, we want you to identify your highest priorities. We're asking for your 2 highest priorities, and then categorizing your the remaining initiatives, again, as support, neutral, or opposed. Like I mentioned, there are almost 40 of these initiatives included, so hopefully we can keep this process simple to kind of maximize engagement from all of you. You can see the complete submission text, the presentations from the stakeholder meetings, the recordings from the stakeholder meetings, all that information on the ISO initiatives website. And then finally, we'll also just have a kind of general comment field available if you want to provide additional context on your votes or describe elements like the impact on market-wide efficiency or system reliability. Next slide, please. And back to you, Amelia. You're on mute.
I will shift over here just to show you the template. We're opening, this is, was opened today and is available for stakeholders, any stakeholder that's registered to submit comments with the ISO. You do not need to have submitted an initiative in this process to rank and prioritize initiatives. It starts out by having you identify your organization and the organization that you represent. And that is how we will ultimately publish the ranked discretionary initiatives. So we'll be listing which initiatives were supported by which organizations. Scrolling down here, it's a fairly, I think, self-explanatory survey. We were open to comments on the process, on the survey, on all of the details of this, but not within this survey. Please feel free to reach out to either customer service or to the staff on this call directly. Definitely working through the first year of this process and want to ensure that it is working as efficiently as possible. As Alyssa noted, there's a high level categorization, and then we have the same questions, but we're asking for the top two individual priorities. I also at this time would like to stop and see if there are any questions or comments.
Hi, we can go ahead and unmute Alva from PG&E. Let's go. Alva, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good morning, Brenda. Good morning, Amelia. I have just a general question about this process, and it affects how we, within PG&E look at these things. There are a number of things on the roadmap that are really kind of in the category of a fix has been proposed. Actually, the structure of the fix has even been proposed. And so there's the question of how important that is. And there's also the question of whether the amount of effort has been correctly, assessed on that in terms of how much effort it requires from CAISO and how it fits into the general work process at CAISO. And then there are some others which are, in particular, some of the ones we proposed are really like essentially initiatives. They're not clearly defined in terms of what the ultimate outcome is going to be. And there's certainly a question there that has come up in terms of when is it appropriate even to think about starting to do the work on those. Is there any way to sort of incorporate kind of project management kinds of thinking into this process so that it's possible to get something which isn't just simply a vote for something? I mean, people can vote on what's most important to them, but there's also consideration of what can be done most efficiently, and perhaps, in a sense, making everybody happy. Maybe the stuff that can be done quickly needs to be done and can be done first, and then the stuff that may still be important but can't be done immediately can still be put onto a project management track. Does that make any sense?
Thank you so much. Yes, it does. Thank you so much for the comment. I want to very clearly distinguish the purpose of the prioritized catalog, which is really to communicate into the ISO's planning process which changes are the highest priority to which stakeholders. The ISO will do the kind of feasibility assessment that you're looking for. They're going to take in these requests, and what we're hoping to do this year with this process is to ensure that we do a comprehensive assessment of what stakeholders' priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
We take that comprehensive assessment and then pass that into the ISO's planning process. They have a process that will check for 4 things, and I'll just take a second here. They're going to look for alignment with ISO strategic goals and existing planning processes. They're going to look at the overall impact of the project. Is this something that the ISO itself thinks will improve market efficiency or system reliability? They will also do that assessment. They'll look at the implementation costs. That's not something we're assuming that stakeholders should do on the ISO's behalf. And they'll also look at doing any of these discretionary initiatives relative to the other commitments that they have, that they've already taken on.
Okay, that's a good clarification. Thank you very much, Amelia.
Yeah, you are very welcome. I'll mention also that we will publish the ranked prioritized catalog, so that it's not only being offered to the ISO's internal processes, but it is also published on the website. So it is it's a way for you to communicate your preferences as an organization to the ISO in a public way. Couple other things to note, because I saw a question come up on the chat. The question came up on the chat, and forgive me because I don't remember which organization it came from, was is there only one prioritization per organization? And at this time there is. I know that can be complicated if you are, for example, a member of a group. So, for example, you're representing a CCA, but you are also choosing to be represented by Cal CCA, or you are a provider of or interested in providing demand response and you're represented by a larger organization like CLICA, or an independent power producer represented in some instance by WPTF, you can submit prioritizations both in your individual organization and have that larger trade group submit on behalf of the entire trade group. In each case, the prioritization should be representative of that stakeholder's particular organizational interests. We are very open to the information that a change is potentially beneficial for the market as a whole. Please add those kind of comments in the comment template that's available, but do represent your organization's own priorities in the rank template. Are there any other questions on this piece of it?
I do see a question from Chen Yu from PG&E. It's asked, she asked, can CAISO also consider the implementation effort? Can CAISO consider the implementation effort as how long it will take, other than the cost?
Yes. Part of the ISO's planning process is to ensure that there is a consistent and clear communication of implementation timelines. Where this piece of the piece fits into the overall planning process for discretionary initiatives is that this final ranked catalog, which we'll have in a few weeks, exciting, fed into the ISO's internal planning process. And what comes out of the other side of that is what we call the roadmap. That roadmap will be issued as a draft in November, as Alyssa mentioned, and would be presented to the board for their review and approval in December of this year. That ends up lining us up to start a new stakeholder catalog process for 2025 in January. Again, very open to any comments on changes that you would like to see in the process. We're aware that we have had to rely on stakeholders to do so much of the work of presenting their own ideas, and I particularly would like feedback on that aspect. I think it's been helpful for the ISO to understand the submissions. I think it helps explain them to other entities as well, but particularly that aspect, comments on. I'll move on to the next segment, and again, I think we can probably end a little bit early today unless there are a lot of questions This,
oh, they just put their hand down, but there was another question in the queue.
okay, let's take it.
If you had just had your hand up and your name starts with a K, if you still have that question, could you put your hand back up? You are now unmuted. Please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Kimaya Abreu with Voltus. I put my hand down because it looks like this slide might get into this question, but I wanted to ask when the roadmap comes out, which takes in, of course, CAISO's own assessment of various timelines and resource concerns with pursuing various initiatives. Is it possible that discretionary initiatives will be prioritized on the roadmap alongside or ahead of any of the non-discretionary initiatives?
Non-discretionary initiatives are by their very nature non-discretionary. So it is unlikely that anything could move. Essentially, the ISO does not have not able to avoid, for instance, complying with FERC orders. So the ISO would not, given a resource constraint, would not choose to take on a discretionary initiative, not to prejudge the process, but my understanding is that they would not choose to take on a discretionary initiative if it meant that they could not take on a non-discretionary initiative. Part of the planning process, and I'll go back a slide here. Part of the planning process is that it's really comprehensive. When the ISO is deciding what to take on, they're also determining whether or not they currently have the resources to be able to develop the policy, develop the technical specifications for whatever that change is, implement them, test them, roll them out. And if they don't find that there is the available capacity to do that, they're making decisions about whether or not to expand the resource base to be able to fully implement whatever policy they take on. So it's a really comprehensive review. The bulk of the potential discretionary initiatives that were submitted are not going to be candidates for the catalog. That's a little bit of that was honestly a little bit of a surprise for me. Even some of the initiatives which were presented by stakeholders in our prioritization workshops have been removed from the list of discretionary initiatives that are open for prioritization. In the vast majority of cases, I think that's for a very good reason. And that reason is that they're already part of an existing current initiative. I'll use a couple examples, just a couple examples here, because I think it might be helpful. One is the most popular submission in our catalog this year was a request for an ability for resources to bid above the $1,000 soft offer cap in certain circumstances that weren't available before. That request triggered a stakeholder process which went to the board for approval and has been submitted for consideration at FERC. That's an example of an initiative that's being dealt with and is not on the list to be prioritized. Another example, and these applies to a few different initiatives which were presented in the workshops having to do with transmission planning. Most of those initiatives are being dealt with in a stakeholder process, which hasn't yet kicked off, but which will kick off before the end of the year to comply with the 2 recent FERC orders on transmission planning and in the ISO's ongoing interconnection process, which was the subject of today's board meeting. So both of those are also being dealt with. There are, as we just discussed, also non-discretionary initiatives, and I'll give 2 examples there because I don't think we've talked about those as much. One is looking for the best example. One is a request, and I don't remember exactly how this was phrased, but for consideration of changes to the governance of EDAM and the market functions of the ISO. That is part of the ongoing pathways discussion, but it's really not discretionary from the ISO's perspective for the ISO to engage in that process. Another example, and it came up in a similar way, was acknowledgement that there could potentially be seams, as there are today, between the edges of our day-ahead or real-time market and other markets or other non-market areas. Obviously, we have to have market design that ensures that we're able to model those transitions between 2 regimes correctly, and we will continue to do so. There are a set of there were a set of submissions that we have. They're variable. There's a sort of a mixed set that we have classified as process improvements. These include suggestions relating to existing processes, so a relatively detailed, specific suggestion for a process improvement, request for additional transparency, and for example, also, and the ISO is evaluating each of these. These were passed into the same prioritization process that our ranked discretionary initiatives will be, and are being evaluated by the various groups in the ISO that own the processes which were the subject of suggested improvement. We will respond to all submissions. Our group is not responsible for the content of those responses, but we will ensure that you receive a meaningful response to each of the submissions. We are, and I will switch out of the full screen mode here and show you what the non-catalog items look like. For example, we have published those. There is an ISO comments and next steps for each of these. I think in many cases that that is a full explanation of where that particular initiative has landed, and I'm not expecting to provide any additional feedback on those unless there's something that's particularly missing there. So I'll use, just because it's at the top of the list, not picking on anybody, but I'll use a suggestion we got not only from the California Public Utility Commission, but from others, that there be consideration of the hourly shaping factors used in the calculation of the maximum import bid price. The ISO's opened an initiative on that. The comments are, I believe, open for a few more days, and that initiative is up on the ISO website. There's a recorded presentation for your review and a paper, which explains both, I think, the issue and has some suggestions for proposed changes to that maximum import bid price shaping. So just an example. And I will stop here for questions.
We can go ahead and unmute Kimaya in case she had a question, a follow-up question.
I did not. I'm sorry. I forgot to lower my hand.
It's okay. We received quite a few submissions. I'll just on this
There's
page
one more question
note that
from Miko as well.
okay.
Hi, yes, Kimiko Chia, Counsel for Cal Advocates. I just wanted to understand, so if it's in the non-catalog grouping, a submission that was submitted, is kind of what's in column D, next steps and information, is that kind of the final information we'll get on the policy initiative? And does that mean we need to resubmit it next year, or will there be more information that's going to be provided in KAISA responding to all initiatives?
I would suggest participating directly in the in the stakeholder process that the transmission planning group at the ISO will be running for compliance with FERC Order 1920. And in that process, advocating for the changes that were suggested in the stakeholder process, in the catalog process this year. In this case, if you were to submit this again in next year's process, it is very likely to receive the same response. This is not a, it is not a short, I don't think it's an abbreviated process. Compliance with both of these FERC orders is going to require time and will be an open process with stakeholders. And that's definitely the most meaningful and appropriate way to interact with the ISO on this issue.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. It will. And we'll switch back to our, I think this is almost our final slide. Here, there are links on the page to our catalog and roadmap stakeholder initiative webpage. There's a lot of information there, and I recommend that if you didn't get the chance to go to any of the working group on the catalog ranking, and you're interested in a particular initiative, it's worth, the recordings are available there, and it's worth reviewing them. They were active working groups with really, really meaningful presentations from the stakeholders who suggested these initiatives. I think a lot of additional content, and then the discussion that happened around those was also useful as well. So if you didn't catch all of them and are submitting a ranking, don't have a firm idea, and want to review something else, there's a lot of additional material available there. The draft catalog, the Excel, is posted in the same place as are the draft non-catalog submissions, and the open comment template as well. So show you that. But the link to this survey is also available on the website. With that, I'll stop and see if we have any questions.
We don't have any more questions, so we were able to answer a few questions in chat. Feel free to visit those questions. It was just, one was from Garrett on just where where his items were located, and they're under the non-catalog items. And the link was given by Lisa down below. And then the other question was about how a stakeholder can become registered to submit comments through the commenting tool. And you just have to sign up through the stakeholdercenter.com/account and register there. But I don't see any more questions on my end. Yeah. Oh, I do see Callie Wells.
All right.
Let's go ahead and take hers.
Hi, it's Callie Wells with WPTF. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. You're a little soft, so speak up.
All right, I will try. And I apologize if I missed this at the beginning. I was a little late jumping on. So the survey that you just showed, I know you're going to take that information and publish the prioritized catalog. Are the actual survey results going to be published, or is that granular level of information going to be in the prioritized catalog that's published, or is that going to be more aggregated?
I think we will be able to publish it on a very granular detail level.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
I just wasn't sure what level of information will be posted publicly after you guys get all the different survey results. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think just to maybe put a little bit of nuance on that, we are, if you rank something as your top priority or one of the two top individual initiatives to you as an organization, we will definitely list that level of detail. This was the top priority for, CalCCA, PG&E, NV Energy, APS. I don't know if we will be able to publish that level of support for the sort of initiative rankings, the individual initiative rankings. If we have too many submissions, that could be a very long list, but we will try to publish that level of detail as well. So this was, also supported by 18 different organizations, and then list them out.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I think the level of granularity you can provide would be useful, just because it's a new process, so understanding how all the different prioritizations are weighted, or if it's a one vote for one vote kind of situation, I think would be really useful, especially if we're looking at process improvements to this process in general as well, since this is kind of the first year you're going through this, would, I think, be valuable information to have. So, but I can appreciate getting all the responses and having to figure out a way to condense that information and make it digestible as well. So thank you.
We are publishing the support by organization, by group identity, rather than having a system of votes. And the reason there is really that it's impossible on our side. We thought it was much less relevant just to tote up votes from different organizations that have very different interests, different sizes, all of it, just didn't seem as relevant as identifying them individually. So that's what we're trying this year. If any of you have a suggestion for an improvement there that you'd like us to consider, please do let us know. Okay. If there are no other questions at this time, I'll hand it off to Brenda.
We do have one more question. If you want to me to
go for it. Unmute.
Okay. Yeah, you can see it also in your chat. It's from Colin Smith. He's asked, will all initiatives on the draft catalog ultimately be included in the final catalog? And this process is primarily focused on how they will be prioritized.
That's correct. Everything on the discretionary initiatives catalog will be on the final, will be on the ranked list of discretionary initiatives. It is possible that there is a submission which, for whatever reason, wasn't anybody's top priority and has a lot of opposition. I wouldn't expect that to end up on the final policy roadmap for the year. If, as a group, stakeholders have zero support and a lot of objection, we will not, that's unlikely to be passed on into the final roadmap for the year.
Okay. And then the second question was, is it possible for some initiatives to be taken off if it does not receive high enough ranking from respondents?
It is possible that given the number of discretionary initiatives which we received, it is possible that they will not all move on to the roadmap. It's if you review the entire list of all of the discretionary initiatives which are open for stakeholder prioritization, there's a lot there, and it would have to, at this point, be implemented at the same time as the ISO is implementing EDAM and a number of other, other projects. So I don't expect that every submitted potential discretionary initiative will make it onto the roadmap, but I will not prejudge the process. We'll wait and see. We will communicate the outcome of the process. I think that's potentially a better answer to that question. So if the discretionary initiative is with whatever ranking, when it comes out of the process in November, it will come out with a CAISO determination of future action. The CAISO is adopting this initiative in its 2024 roadmap to be submitted to the board and will commence work on it. The CAISO has chosen not to take this on at this time, potentially, is another potential outcome. If that is the outcome, we will provide some explanation as to why we did that.
Great, thank you. There's no more questions. I don't see any.
Okay. All right. Do you want to move on to the final slide? And I'm not sure if I'm still presenting, Brenda.
I have it now, don't worry.
Okay.
Thank you, Amelia. So just want to give a shout out to Amelia. She's our principal economist and director of market strategy and governance. Want to thank her, and also Alyssa, our senior policy integration and governance specialist. So just want to give them like a quick shout out for their helpfulness and during the working group process. And these links are hyperlinked on the webpage. You'll see those there, as well as we have a new energy blog that is posted on our new website. Feel free to check it out. We just posted one recently with Amber Motley our senior manager for short-term forecasting team, and she and her team were able to kind of discuss things that are happening in the grid, as well analysis for the forecast of this year for El Nino Nina. So it's kind of cool to kind of take a look on what's happening within those weather patterns and affecting the grid. We do have upcoming meetings in the next few weeks. Market Performance and Planning Forum will be announcing that. We'll have a few analysis from Guillermo's team in that meeting, as well as a little bit from Amber's team to highlight a few things that were happening last month. And then we'll kind of have the stakeholder symposium coming up soon with the registration. We're targeting hopefully next week. We are working right now with a few vendors to hopefully firm up things that are happening within the registration site, but we're also opening up a great sponsorship opportunity for folks who are interested in participating for the stakeholder symposium. So that'll be exciting, and that'll be happening on October 30th with the receptions on October 29th, which will happen in the evening. And then the new California website has been launched a few weeks ago, and we're excited that everything is running smoothly. Hopefully everyone's able to navigate through all different components on the website. Everything such as the policy initiatives is under the Stakeholder Symposium Center. It's like the second tab on the very top left corner. You'll see that Stakeholder Center, and you just click on that, and it's going to drop down to all policy initiatives and so forth of all the meetings. But everything looks good from my end. I don't see any more questions. If any, Yolande, do you see any questions on your end? I want to make sure if we didn't miss any.
No. No
Thank you.
questions in not in queue or chat.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks again for Amelia and Alyssa. Thanks so much for the team, and we hope to hear your survey questions. That survey link is also on the webpage as well in the chat and also on this presentation, but feel free to visit the link. It's on the initiative webpage, so it'll be on the very little bit on that first activity listed there. But we look forward to your questions, so be sure to answer them when you can. And this recording will be hopefully posted by Friday for those who want to review it and make sure they were able to answer any questions. Thank you so much, everyone, and hope everyone has a great week and happy Wednesday. Take care.
The conference is now over. You may now disconnect.